Hey race fans, Alex Weaver here. We're going to break down Atlanta, get you ready for Martinsville. But first, I want to welcome in our resident championship winning crew chief, Cole Pearn. Cole, Atlanta, we saw it. It was Kevin Harvick all day dominating. They win it and take it to victory lane.
Yeah, it's definitely his place. They looked early on really strong, milled the race. They kind of got off a bit, but definitely nailed it right that last stage. And he made a great restart there to get the lead and never let it go.
So from your point of view, why was Harvick so much better on those long green flag runs? It seemed like the longer of a green flag we got, the speedier the four got.
It just comes down to balance with these cars. I think that's why you see a car do so well on a long run. It's if you're a little bit tight and you slip the tires a little bit too much, a couple laps in a row, these tires don't like to get hot. So the hotter they get, the worse they get. And then you're stuck with that balance for 50 some odd laps, and it just magnifies. So if you get a guy out front where he's happy with his balance and is turning well, he just has the opportunity to crush everyone. And that's what we saw. I think the four was good, but it just magnified itself over the course of the run. Now with these cars not having a track bar adjuster in it, you take off a little bit tight, and that's what you got. I think that's why we saw the spread that we did at Atlanta.
Yeah, well, speaking of spread, there wasn't much spreading going on pit road because guys were kind of stopping to make sure that they got the lane that they wanted on the restart. So I know you were keeping an eye on it because the 19 was a little guilty of it.
No doubt. I mean, I've been advocating for the cone rule, or at least some type of way that you could line up in the preferred groove. The leader has the opportunity to take the outside or the inside lane. Why can't the second row do the same thing? And I think it would be more fair if guys had the opportunity to pick which lane, and it would cut that, kind of stuff jockeying we're seeing at the end of pit road. Luckily, we haven't seen too many accidents, but it's coming at some point.
I want to ask you, from a crew chief point of view, how big are tires when it comes to Atlanta Motor Speedway?
Oh, it's huge. And I think a lot of that issues we saw has to do with maybe not having practice, guys not having an indication of they might have an issue, or there might be a setup issue that they need to work on. But with the schedule, they're locked into what they got. On the green flag stops, had a little bit more grace. On the yellow flag stops, when the track gets cleaned off, there's just so much grip up there. And you could see in the throttle traces, guys were wide open, especially with the 14 when he was leading. You're wide open. You're going through the corner at a much greater speed because there's more grip in the track at that time. Obviously he had his issues and seemed like other guys were right on the brink. I don't want to get too nerdy here, but when you have a looser car, there's more load on the right rear tire typically, and then you're also slipping it because it's the tire that's getting the most work.
Well, we saw that Stewart Haas Racing had the speed because they get the car in victory lane for the 4 camp. But Cole, what's your burning question for SHR?
Yeah, obviously with the 14 having issues like he did and the 4 being so strong, maybe I don't know if the 4 was on the limit of things as well, but obviously there was something different with the 14 setup versus the 4. They've been running a lot better lately, definitely showing more speed than the rest of the Stewart Haas cars, but maybe they had something different with rear toe or something different setup wise that they couldn't physically change on pit road. On pit road, all you can do is, change, cross weight or the track bar height or air pressure. And when you're blistering a tire, it's hard to know what real adjustment you can do to make it better, other than to tighten the car up and just get less load, on that right rear tire. But yeah, tough one for them to answer because definitely, they had the speed, but to not have the durability, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think they may need to take a page out of Rodney Childers' notebook to see if they can follow the 4 suit to get into victory lane. It is old, it is worn out, but the Atlanta pavement, overachiever or underachiever?
Overachiever. I love it. I think there's just so few tracks now that have that old course aggregate of racetrack. Atlanta has a lock and key style, friction to it that when the track's green, there's just a ton of grip there. And as it rubbers in, cars have to move around and find the fresh pavement to find more grip. Whereas a lot of the new tracks where it's smoother, the asphalt's less porous, the main groove kind of tends to get polished, if anything. I think Atlanta, the fact that you got to search around and find fresh pavement just makes it a really special place.
Toyota, underachiever or overachiever?
It's hard to say. I still think they're underachieving, but for sure it's been better than what they have been. They've been getting close. They've been getting better, but definitely haven't had the speed that the Chevrolets have had, or SHR has had, or Penske has had. So it'll be interesting to see what momentum they can build off of this week.
So we'll classify them as like an achiever, not over, not under. They're just achieving. Okay,
So
next up. Yeah, next up is Atlanta in June. Overachiever, underachiever.
It's a tough call. I mean, I think I would say overachiever. I think it's meant to be a hot and slick racetrack, so having it be that by having it hot is great. Obviously, not having good guys fall out of the seat after the race isn't good, but it definitely adds an element to it. I think anytime endurance on the driver standpoint is part of it, that's cool to have another athlete element to the sport. And I think just having the cars slip around more, I personally enjoy that, but obviously it changes the spread in the field. Not as much close racing over the long run, just because guys are having to force to manhandle their car more so than have to race the guy that they're racing.
All right, last one for this. Overachiever, underachiever, lap cars.
Yeah, I'll probably get torched for saying this, but everyone's racing for something. I get it, but I just think that they could do away with the whole damaged vehicle policy and just have a rule that once you're 5 laps down, you just be out of the race. I think guys that are just
take it to the car.
Well, I mean, you got guys. Some lap cars are around the bottom, lap cars are around the top, and it's just a moving chicane of the leaders trying to navigate those. And I think that's when you're watching the race at home and you see the intervals jumping up and down, you're like, why'd that guy all of a sudden gain a second or that guy lose a second? It's just all in how they hit the lap cars. I think we'd have more straight up racing for the lead if they weren't in the way all the time.
Well, we definitely saw it at Atlanta, and a place that it is definitely going to come into play is where we're headed next. We're Wednesday night racing at Martinsville. So it's 500 laps at Martinsville. It's a grueling track. It's the first ever true night race that we've seen there, where the lights are going to start when the green flag drops. What can we expect for the paperclip?
Oh, I can't wait. I think it's going to be awesome. Definitely a sight we've all wanted to see. Short track racing under the lights, it doesn't get any better. Obviously, if fans were there, it'd be great. But we know that's coming at some point. But man, talk about having a curveball thrown at you for these teams. They're going there with a new aero package this year with the low downforce package. They got a new tire left and right. First time we've raced there since the 70s in the summer, and you're going to run under the lights. So when you stack that all up, don't be mad at your team if they don't have a good day and didn't get it right.
Well, you mentioned it. This is the first time that we've ran there in June. The closest that we've gotten has been May. But I want to ask you, what is the difference between a June night race and even an early spring or a fall late afternoon race? Because I can imagine it's going to be very different.
I think the biggest thing I'm curious to see with it being hot and slick this time and the new tire is how much the groove rubber's in. Typically when the tire's hotter and softer, we get more rubber in and the groove moves around more. Where we have the cold races, it kind of tends to not do that as much, doesn't lay as much rubber down. So if that comes into effect, it'll be a lot different than what we've seen in years past.
You touched on it a little bit earlier, but what do you expect from this short track package?
I think track position won't matter as much. I think you'll have more comers and goers. I think with last year's package, the wake behind the cars was a lot bigger and it was harder to get close, even at Martinsville. I know that's hard to believe, but it's definitely the case. So I think, with this rules package and more fall off with a softer tire, definitely going to have more comers and goers. So I don't think you'll see the dominating performances that you saw last year.
Well, that's the crew chief side of things. My favorite always is that somebody leaves irritated at somebody else. I'm looking at the 9. I don't know who he's going to be involved with. It may be the 18 of Kyle Busch. It may be the 22 of Joey Logano, but he has some history at Martinsville.
I would say whoever is in his way at the end of the race will probably be the one he has a feud with. Yeah. The 9 car has been really, really good. One of the best cars the last couple of years at Martinsville. So I'd expect them to have a strong run. And if he's in contention, I don't think he'll be cutting any favors, so to speak.
Well, it'll be interesting to see who leaves mad when they pull out of Martinsville. We're racing there on Wednesday. Midweek racing is back. And hey, guys, it's a short track. So you're in for some great excitement and some great racing action that's coming up Wednesday at 7 p.m. on FS1. Cole, thank you so much for breaking it down, and we'll see you guys right back here next time.